And buonasera a tutti. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to What's the Scoop episode number 23. Great to have everybody in. Hope you guys had a wonderful week and weekend. Here today with a longtime good friend of mine and perhaps one of the most knowledgeable hockey people I've met in my life. My longtime college friend and more well known as the Hockey Nut New Jersey Devil fan, Nicole Gizzi. Nikki, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Scoop. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Appreciate you being on tonight. Got a lot going on in the NHL right now between the playoffs, between obviously the controversies going on between the now former Arizona Coyotes and soon to be Utah, who knows what. So we're looking forward to getting into a lot of this with you, and of course the people who will inevitably be joining us tonight in the comments. Looking forward to what y'all have to say as well. As I mentioned, Nikki is a Devil fan, so her Devil knowledge is vast, but she pretty much could talk about any of the 32 clubs in the NHL. So I'm sure that if you have a question about any other team, I'm sure she'll be very able to answer that as well. So before we get into that, just a little bit of a background for you, Nikki. Actually, good friend Jody Moncrief from over on the Rocky Mountain Sports Network says, "How is Taylor doing tonight?" Yeah, I mentioned that Nikki is perhaps one of the few people I know who love Taylor Swift more than me. So I'm sure you'll be getting a lot of that content tonight, Nikki. So be ready for that.
I
I should
will.
have had you on last week when it was number 22. Um, this is from Kurt Valenti Scoops. How are you? Welcome, Nicole. First question of the night: who are the biggest threats to the Avalanche to get back to the finals? All right, well that made my job easy because that was my first question. So, Nikki, I'll start off with that one. From what you've seen, who are the biggest threats to Colorado? We've got a lot of Colorado fans who'll be watching tonight, by the way. Who are the biggest threats to the Avalanche to get back to a repeat?
From an Eastern Conference perspective, I would definitely say the New York Rangers. They literally won their game a couple hours ago. They are now on a 5-game win streak after they annihilated the Ovechkin and the Capitals. So they're definitely someone to be looking out for on the East. On the West, I would actually say there's at least 3 teams that Colorado should keep an eye out for. First, currently playing in Game 7 behind me is Dallas and Vegas. Now, if either of those teams advance, they are going to definitely be a threat to Colorado. One, you have the defending Stanley Cup champions in Vegas who are fighting their way to round 2. 2, Dallas has been very stellar with Jake Ottinger in net. That's going to be something interesting to follow. And the third team I believe would be a threat is the Vancouver Canucks. They are currently playing on their third string goalie, and they advanced to round 2 the other night, and I personally have them winning the cup. So I hope that they go as far as they can. But I think that after all the issues that they went through last season with the coaching change, they've just become a lot stronger and are ready to fight through anything.
I think that those are a lot of great points, and I remember you having the Canucks winning in the bracket challenge. So I'm not surprised to hear you say that you're hoping that they go for. Jody says that's easy to get. The Avs goalie is their biggest threat. Um, that's funny. Yeah, no, Jody is one of the Avs fans that I mentioned, but pardon. Um, so looking at what you just said, is there a Okay, thanks, Kenny. Is there a team that didn't advance from round one that you were either disappointed by, or at least you were surprised that they left so early?
I mean, for me personally, I really did not want the Rangers advancing because, I am a Devils fan and
Right.
the rivalry stays strong.
Right.
I was hoping that the Capitals could have at least another run with, Ovechkin's retirement looming at some point. Though it is obvious they are a much older team, it's a lot harder for them to advance. Other than that, I think the series were pretty good. In particular, it's no surprise that Toronto lost last night. I was rooting hard for Boston, so I'm very glad that they did advance. But I think Toronto needs to do a lot of. And there goes the poster. I do think that Toronto needs to rebuild their core four and start from scratch there because obviously for the past couple of years they keep getting eliminated in round 1 minus last year. Um,
Right.
they do need to make some changes because keeping that system going any longer is not going to be beneficial for them.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And of course, my buddy Trevor came in and says, "Hey, it's another episode of What's the Swift?" Swift, I can't even say it. Oh my bad, wrong show. LOL. Hey, great to see you both. Great to see you too, Trevor. Let's see, it's 6.5 minutes into the recording. We've already got 2 Swift comments. I'm not sure. I should have done an over under on that one, uh, but good to see both y'all on here. Yeah, no, I think, and again, I'm positioned as you as a Flyer fan and someone who grew up in Western New York. I did not want the Rangers to advance, particularly for one reason, which we'll get to that reason or that person in a few moments. I'm sure, obviously it was inevitable that was going to come up at some point. Kenny says, Nicole, I heard you're a Yankees fan. In your opinion, how close is the Rangers Devils rivalry to Yankees Red Sox?
Ooh, okay. I only started following Yankees about 3 years ago when Aaron Judge really made the scene. I am a big Judge fan. However, I do know that the Rangers and Devils rivalry is very similar to that of the Yankees Red Sox. Though I do think that just the fact that the Rangers and Devils are literally across the Hudson makes a big difference in that rivalry, given that Boston and the Yankees are a couple of states apart. Um, with that being said, though, it's obvious that both of those fan bases are very passionate about their teams, so I will say that there is that similarity with them. But I just think that given how close they are to each other in proximity, and just the fact that Rangers fans keep invading the Rock every time they come to our arena, it just shows that there's a lot more intensity and rivalry within the Hudson.
Now remind me because I genuinely don't know. So the Rangers and Devils, how long have they both been in the NHL?
The Devils have been in the NHL since they relocated from the Colorado Rockies in 1982. The Rangers were an original six team back in the 1940s, so the Rangers have had a long history in the NHL compared to the Devils. But the
Okay.
Devils, the Devils still being a newer power, even though it's only been a few years ago, a couple 20, 30 years ago. Um, I do think that that also can technically play a part because the Devils didn't come to the tri-state as soon as the Rangers did, obviously. So obviously there was a ton more Rangers fans already planted in New Jersey. But given that New Jersey is the Devils in particular, are the only national team sports wise for the state, it's kind of great to see that there is some passion for it, given that there's not much representation in Jersey for sports.
That makes sense. And obviously the teams that are in New Jersey pretty much usually identify as New York, obviously the Jets, the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so they take that moniker. And I was just asking because, the Yankees, Red Sox, just thinking from that perspective as someone who on my side follows baseball more, they've been, the Yankees as an organization have existed since 1901 and were the Yankees as of 1913 after being the Baltimore Orioles for 2 years and then the Highlanders for a decade. So I was just trying to think back in terms of the historic nature of it, which one has been, in existence longer. It makes sense that it was the
Yeah.
baseball one. But so yeah, there's probably benefits on both sides to that as well. Like you said, the newer passion on one side and the more historic nature of the baseball one. I love the clashing sweater. Our buddy Dave Mullen is in on YouTube. I love the clashing sweaters representing the Battle of the Turnpike. Um, yeah, the clashing sweaters, more like the crashing sweaters, or both of our teams crapped out to end the season. So that was not it was a pretty anticlimactic end of the season for both of us. So neither one of us has had a ton of exciting things to talk about the last month or so. But that brings me into I'm gonna ask you a couple questions here about your guys. We were talking a little bit about the playoffs, and now I want to ask you about your team specifically. So going into this off season, I know obviously you guys just the Lindy Ruff transition was made. I know that there was a couple of guys. I know earlier this season, a couple of guys who were really struggling. I know that there was one player whose name I'm blanking on right now that really had a rough start to the season, but ended okay. Just looking at who you guys have this offseason, both guys who are going to be coming back next year and guys who are impending free agents. Is there somebody that you're looking at and saying that you think he has a chance of not being back next year? Not necessarily because his contract is expiring, but somebody who they could bring back, but you don't think they will.
I think in particular, one of the defensemen, Brandon Smith, he's not the most favorite player from the fan base perspective, but he did step up when he was needed, especially getting physical with some players when um, pretty much our team was under attack. It's obvious that we didn't have an enforcer until Fitzgerald signed McDermott, so he did step up in that aspect. But his issue is that he is a liability in the sense that he takes too many penalties, and that usually leads to power play goals from the opposing teams. So he is a liability in that sense, but a lot of people do protect him. Another player that I do actually hope remains with the team, he was picked up in at the trade deadline, Jake Allen. Now we know that Fitzgerald is not intending on keeping Jake Allen over Capo Kakinen. Both goalies were acquired.
Right.
Um, I personally always liked Jake Allen from when he was the backup goalie to Yaroslav Halak at the St. Louis Blues. I think that he plays a key role in developing our young goalie talent. He has that NHL experience. He's worked with tons of other goaltenders, and it's even shown that he's tried to help keep the Devils in their remaining games that they played in the season. He pretty much proved a lot of people wrong, and I hope that Fitzgerald, not that he's listening, but if he
You never
uh,
know.
that's true. You never know. I just hope that he considers keeping him over Kakinen because I do think that there is more potential in Allen that, he didn't really get to showcase more so with such a tight schedule remaining.
I mean, once again, I mean, you kind of almost just gave me a perfect segue into my next question because you brought up Kakkonen and Allen, and that was where I was parlaying into was both guys started 33 games, but Allen won almost twice of the games that
Mhm.
Kakkonen did. His GAA was point 0.2 better than Kakkonen.
Yep.
Um, Pretty comparable save percentages. Even with the pretty comparable playing time, Allen has definitely seemingly more appreciable stats across the board. So makes sense from an outside standpoint. It makes sense why you're obviously in favor of keeping Allen over Kakkonen if it has to be one or the other.
Mhm.
Um, Next question. So I've given you a couple of open-ended ones. Now it's time to get into some specifics, get in a little bit more into the uh, intangibles and some of the more details of your guys. So according to what I could find, the best season that any of your players had this year was your center Curtis Lazar.
Mhm.
Do you think Curtis Lazar is going to be able to maintain his? He had a +10. He had 18 assists. He had 25 points total. Do you think that his production is something that he can maintain going into next season? He also played 71 games, which was near the top among Devils players.
Curtis was definitely a shining star when he was acquired by the Devils at last year's trade deadline. But we all do know that when Lindy Ruff was still coach, he was playing players pretty much in their positions that they were not comfortable with, especially with Timo Meyer. We noticed with Timo, for example, that he was not really doing too well on the wing, but when they moved him back from where he was pretty much on fire. So the same could go for Lazar in that sense. Lundy did have some luck with Lazar, but I think if they put him back to where he's strongest, he's going to be able to maintain all those stats, give or take injury wise as well. You don't want him to get hurt because that could have some type of impact. But I do like Curtis, and I hope that he continues to shine on for the Devils.
That makes sense. And I'll jump back on that in a second, but I want to get to Kenny's question here. Question for both of you. If you were allowed to take one player off of another team for free, but your Stanley Cup lives are resting on this pick, who would it be? You go first because I'm going to ponder this one for a second.
Okay. This one's 100% easy for me. It's Jake Ottinger.
Oh,
I think Jake's a stellar goaltender. He pretty much is carrying Dallas on their backs right now, besides Wyatt Johnston, scoring all those goals. But Jake Ottinger in particular has impressed me since his rookie season. He is a very reliable goaltender. He's pretty much impressed me. And for someone that young being that reliable, it's not that common anymore, especially from what Devils have seen with Vitek and Akira, unfortunately, after
Mhm.
last year's playoff run. It's unfortunate that it did happen, but with someone like Jake Ottinger as a starting goaltender for the New Jersey Devils, I think it would change
Mhm.
the entire dynamic of the team and they would make a run.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I was surprised that you said Ottinger. I'm not quite sure why, but that was interesting. And I like that you went goaltender as well because that was where mine was going as well when I had to get to when we got to the Flyers because obviously we know the Carter Hart situation,
Hmm.
the issues that they had at replacing him. They had a couple of young guys who had a nice couple of games but just looked overmatched. And I know you're probably not going to be thrilled with hearing me say this, but this is a guy who was born in Scoops. You can say Matt Rempe. LOL. No, thank you. No, absolute thank you.
I don't think any of us want Matt Rempe.
No, I like my guys to actually be on the ice and not in the box, but thank you. But yeah, no, you're probably not going to love that I'm going to say this, but yeah, he's from Missouri, which obviously I just spent a little bit of time there. And he's had before they got eliminated, he was doing fantastically for Toronto. I would probably say Joseph Woll.
Yeah,
Um,
I could
I,
see that.
I think that he's somebody who he was not one of the reasons that they went down really. And I think that he just his production for especially for the sort of lack of advantages that some aspects of their ice had at times. I thought that his numbers, he pretty much cleared anybody in terms of his ability to save his guys, and even for one round, I think that was pretty impressive. So just based on who was in the round one, I would probably go with them or go with him rather.
I like that
Um,
we both went with goaltenders.
Yes, yeah, so did I. But I mean, when you had when you had the Carter Hart situation go on, and it was almost pretty um, not a direct correlation, but it was very strongly correlated. Our decline in goalie production and our crapping out at the end at the I think it was 8-game losing streak or something.
Yeah.
There was a pretty strong tie there, I think, and so yeah, that was where my mind went as well. Question from Nicole from Kurt Valenti says. Devils have a great history with all their Stanley Cups, but do you think the Devils organization and their fans look at the Rangers because they are in New York City and play in the Garden and feel like they are the little brother, or no? Was there more to that? I can't tell if he just put the ellipsis or if Kurt just typed so long that it went off the page. Uh, it says, after little brother, it says, or not in their league. Uh, Go ahead, Nicole.
I would definitely not consider the Devils to be the Rangers' little brother whatsoever. One of my biggest, clapbacks at Rangers fans, it's kind of irrelevant to like the sport itself, but it's a fun fact that I always keep in my back pocket. 1994, the last time the Rangers won the Stanley Cup, was the last time that the Stanley Cup was handed out without white glove service. In 1995, they implemented white glove service for the Cup, and who was the first team to get that service? The New Jersey Devils. So that's one of my biggest clapbacks at Rangers fans, because the cup was given to the Devils with clean hands, and the Rangers got it with dirty hands. I like to say that, but I don't consider the Devils to be the little brother. I think they have proved to be a very stellar organization. They're pretty much holding the state of New Jersey on their back since there's no other teams that can pretty much call them and pretty much help them in the sense that they're the only team in New Jersey. While there's a ton of New York sports teams that are playing in the state of New Jersey, though they don't get the state doesn't get that credit.
Right.
I know that the Rangers have had much more success cup wise, and we did get crapped on this season by them. But if you're looking at perspectives, the Devils are a much classier organization. They have some very good players that need to develop still, and what we had with Lindy Ruff did not really help them excel. I don't like to consider last season a fluke because they were on a roll. They made it as far as they could. They had nothing to lose. No one had put them there. Paul Bichonette in particular didn't put them there. So it was even more of a success for them when they make it to the postseason. But I don't like when people try to say that we're the younger brother of the Rangers because, we've proved how many times that we were better at them at some point. So it just doesn't make sense for that. I think that the rivalry is strong, but when you're comparing it like that, it's just, there's different players on each team. Some of them are better at some things than the others. Capo and Jack, it was the first and second overall pick. Everyone was on the Rangers was very happy when Capo Caco was drafted, but he didn't really pick up until now. Whereas Jack in particular, he picked up right away. So I don't know. I really despise the Rangers. So I will defend my Devils to the grave.
No, understandable. And in fact, it's interesting the way you talked about geography a little bit, because it's kind of almost a similar. You see kind of a similar energy from the other side up here, because obviously I'm from Western New York, and Buffalo Bills fans love to say that they're the only New York football team, because obviously the Giants and the Jets play in New Jersey. So you'll typically see either the fans or sometimes the organization themselves basically say, when New York's football team won today or something like that, which is kind of funny. I want to get to some of the comments here. Yeah, Kenny just said Giants and Jets are technically New York, but New Jersey, but New York name. Mark Calderio says big win for the Rangers, 1-0. Yeah, thanks for that. I've got the Hurricanes winning it in our bracket pool thingy, so going down 1-0 today was not exciting for me. Trevor says, sorry guys, I had to say it before it slipped my mind. You can blame Kenny when I bring up Taylor Swift, LOL, go Avs. I don't know how it would slip your mind when you've been making the same joke for a week and a half, but okay. My buddy Keith Brugman's catching up. He says, hey Scoops and Nicole, great catching up with some hockey with y'all. Bring an old school. Oh, I think he means being an old school fan. I've always respected the Devils and those formidable defenses of the 90s. So we've got an Avs fan. I'm pretty sure he's an Avs fan. And Scoops and Nicole, who was the best team you've seen win the Stanley Cup? I'm going to let you go first because I'm pretty sure the team that I'm going to say is going to get your energy going.
Oh my goodness. When the Devils were on their slump after the Stanley Cup final in 2012, because we all know after they lost in that cup final round, they just went on a downslope from there. Right. I was pretty much rooting for the Chicago Blackhawks. I really liked Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. I would compare, what the Devils were doing versus what all these other teams were doing. And, it would just make me question, why can't the Devils do what the Blackhawks are doing, for example? It's literally why I have a poster of pretty much every team behind me. That was my bridge, so to say, to the rest of the NHL and why I watched all the other games. But the 2013 Stanley Cup in particular was amazing. I believe that was the one that was the it only takes 17 seconds story, where they pretty much won that cup in that time frame.
It was.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall. It's been a little while. But also in 2015, when I did graduate 8th grade, the night before, the Chicago Blackhawks did win the Stanley Cup. So that always resonates with me too, because, they were a dynasty from the 2010s to the 2015s before they ended up going on their own downslope. And, I kept a huge following on Kane and Toews. They were just dynamic players. That they were unstoppable at that point. I just grew up watching them, Hossa, Brent Seabrook, Patrick Sharp, Corey Crawford. All those names were household to me. And that's really what, like I said before, it bridged my way to explore other teams in the NHL. And not that I'm, crapping on my Devils or anything. I love them with all my heart. They're at the top of my, my fan base. I root for them every day. But I like to branch out and see what the other teams are doing because, we're going to play them eventually. And it's good to know, who to look out for as a threat or, what's going on.
No, I very much agree with that. I think that sometimes getting to just kind of see what else is out there, but also like I was talking to somebody about this a couple days ago on one of the other shows, but you sometimes you have to get intel from other organizations, and it's only going to make you be able to run your organization better by knowing what's going on around.
I was
Um,
even what do you call? I was watching the Vancouver Canucks around that time too, when the Stanley Cup, not Stanley Cup, I'm sorry, the NHL draft was hosted in New Jersey,
mhm,
and during that point, Gary Bettman announced that the Devils had traded for Canucks goaltender Corey Schneider,
right.
and I was extremely excited about that because I watched him when he was with Vancouver, backing up for Roberto Luongo, another um, hockey legend. And I was extremely excited about it because one, I already knew of his playing style and he was really great at that time. Two, I saw him coming into the organization being pretty much our Lord and Savior. Three, it's unfortunate what happened to him injury wise, but he was a big part of, me growing up into the fandom. And it's no surprise that I'm wearing his jersey right now.
Oh my goodness.
I was probably one of the first people to get his Devils jersey when he was traded. That's how excited I was about him. And you know what? If it wasn't for me branching out, I would have never even known about him from the beginning.
That's an awesome story. And just kind of hearing the background there a little bit, and also reminded me of a funny story about you and I. Not our first becoming friends, but something that happened for you and I that I'm going to tell later on in the show. But pardon me. But I'm going to answer I'm going to answer the question that we were asked before real quick, and then I'm going to get to Kenny's right here. Uh, you're not going to like that I'm going to say this, but I think just in terms of teams that I've seen, the most impressive team to win the Stanley Cup for me is the Vegas Golden Knights. I think that just again they were in their third year. I think it was their third year as in existence, or no, I'm sorry, I think fourth year in existence. And you and I have had this argument before about how expansion teams have it, quote unquote, have it easier, or or one thing or another. And I'll let you state your take on that, so I don't get anything wrong, because I know you've got your issues with the Golden Knights, but the fact that they jumped in, they got Jack Eichel, which as a growing up in Western New York, seeing him finally do something for a competent organization was really nice. Um, but yeah, I'm going to get to, but again, just I think because of the quick turnaround, real quick, and just the way that they were able to just develop that chemistry. Because again, and we've seen it with the Brooklyn Nets, we've seen it with the Phoenix Suns. Again, that's I know that's basketball, but we've seen it with myriad organizations. The San Diego Padres. Collecting talent doesn't mean winning championships
Right.
necessarily. And so I think that fact that they built that cohesion and built that chemistry clearly both on and off the ice so quickly was really impressive to me. And I'm going to get to Kenny's question, then I'm going to let you talk about the Golden Knights, because I think that that's something that everyone's going to want to hear. Actually, let's go to Keith's question real quick first. You lose a bet. Would you rather destroy your team's jersey on social media with no explanation? Yikes. Or wear a jersey of the team you dislike the most, holding up your number one finger with a smile and support on social media and no explanation? That it might be the most creative question I've ever been asked on this show. You go first, because I'm going to have to read that 3 times to process it.
Okay, that's pretty easy. I would wear a jersey of the team that I dislike the most. And it's easy for me to do that even if I, wanted to, because I don't just own Devils jerseys in this capacity. So for a little backstory, when Adidas signed for being the jersey provider for the NHL, I was a little disappointed because I personally believe that Reebok jerseys are better quality. And I grew up in them and I really like them. So a couple of years into COVID, that's when all this started happening. I noticed that there was a big clearance sale on the Shop NHL website, and there was women's Reebok jerseys on sale for as low as $20. My first 3 non-Devils jerseys were Chicago Blackhawks Jonathan Toews, Carolina Hurricanes Eric Stahl, and Vancouver Canucks Ryan Miller. Um, Not only for the teams, but I love those players. So repping their names on my back was something that I really looked up to. And, I don't think it's wrong to wear another team's jersey. It's just, for me, it adds credibility to how much I know about hockey and being able to, explore other teams and players in that aspect. But if we're talking about teams that I would not I would never wear the jersey of. You cannot force me to put a Rangers jersey on my back. That will never happen. It would have to be another team because my allegiance to the Devils is really strong, and I would never do anything in that aspect to sacrifice that loyalty. Because anything blue that's not Seton Hall, I'm not wearing it.
Kenny has a follow-up that I don't even quite really understand. Says, "Tell that to those darn Eagles fans, Nicole. I don't remember the last time I wore a jersey that wasn't an Eagles jersey. So clearly it's not about me. I don't know what you're referring to, but no, that makes sense. And again, like you said, a lot of that is usually about the players, not necessarily the teams itself.
Yeah.
Um, and I would probably have the same answer. The funny response that I had originally to Keith was that you didn't specify what finger I had to hold up, but on the other side of things, yeah, no, I can't bring myself to have a jersey of my team and then just destroy it.
No.
It's just I see those videos of guys who, like, I saw it with Saquon Barkley when he left the Giants. I think that the Giants fans have treated him horribly. I think that, excuse me, I saw it with, I'm trying to think of who it was. It was someone last year that I saw it with, but I've seen it just time and time again where people are like, "Oh, I'm burning their jersey," or one thing or another, and it's just if you're frustrated, then that's fine, but and that's understandable. I mean, I was frustrated when the Yankees lost Didi Gregorius. I was frustrated when the Yankees lost a couple of different players. Um, I was frustrated last week when the Eagles lost Boston Scott to the LA Rams. But yeah, no, I would much rather wear a team jersey that I don't like rather than wreck a jersey for a team that I love. I just can't see myself doing that. I see
Plus,
an ad. Sorry.
I wanted to add real quick, I can't see myself ever burning a jersey or doing anything of that sort because one, you've paid good money for it, especially how
Right.
much they cost nowadays.
Exactly.
I wouldn't like burn my money away, so to say. Like I would
Yeah,
never.
that's a really good point as well. Trevor says, "I see an Avs versus Devils Stanley Cup in the future. I hope I didn't just jinx that. LOL. That would be a lot of fun." Excuse me.
I think that would be really fun too because former Devil Miles Wood is currently there. Um, so I really did like him when he was with New Jersey. So seeing that rivalry of the Devil, like all his former teammates versus him on a different team in the Cup final would be pretty cool.
You answer this one because I gotta refresh my memory real quick. Besides your team's jerseys, who has the best jersey in the NHL? And I didn't. And I after this, we're getting back to the Golden Knights because I still need to hear your Golden Knights rant. So
Does this mean jersey or logo?
I'm pretty sure it means jersey, but if he says logo, then
Because I feel like that's a whole different, like talking about the logos is one thing, but the jerseys itself, it's there's multiple different variations of team jerseys.
yeah, that's a good point as well. Let's see if he sends any follow-up message there. While he does that, I'm gonna Keith says, "Would you or have you?" Oh, sorry. Have you or would you wear your team's jersey to a rival home game? Um, I have, I have done that in baseball. I've worn Yankees to both Citi Field and Fenway Park. Fenway Park numerous times. I've worn to uh, I'm forgetting the name of Rogers Center where the Blue Jays play. I haven't done it in NHL, but it's only because I've not gone to an NHL game since I had a jersey. Yeah, in baseball, I do it and I love doing it. Like I think that's part of the sports fan experience. Is as long as it's relatively respectful and you're not just being a complete lunatic. I think a lot of the experience is about just kind of having a good time back and forth. I get into it with Red Sox fans every time I go to Fenway, and I love it. And to credit them, Red Sox fans are typically nothing but great to me. Go ahead, Nikki.
I've been to a Rangers home game where the Devils were the opponent, and I would not wear an ounce of red. There's just a history of bad things going on at MSG when Devils fans are around, especially after the beatdown that they had this season. It's just trouble waiting to happen, and I just don't want to get involved with that. I literally wore an old NHL hoodie that I had gotten in the New York shop.
Mhm.
It's a cutout of the goaltender mask, and it has all, well, at the time it was 30 teams, but it had all 30 teams like meshed in there. So I was wearing a little ounce of red, Devil's red, because it was on there, but you couldn't really tell who I was rooting for in that sense. And I think it's important for me to, at least when it's a Devils away game, to stay neutral in that sense, because you're not looking for trouble. And I know that you should be able to feel safe rooting for your team that you're passionate about when they're on the road, but there's just been too many instances of instigators and, people getting attacked in the stands or on the concourses. I'm just not looking for trouble in that aspect.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it also, like you said, it depends on like the not only the rivalry but like the situation. I think because obviously some people take certain things way too far, and you, like you said, you don't want to get into a situation where you're instigating or where you're potentially on the other end of somebody trying to instigate, which you never know who those people are, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going back, Trevor says, Jersey, I'll make it tough for both of you. LOL. So you go ahead, Nikki, because I'm going to think
Okay,
for a second.
I have two. So the first one that I think is really great is the Carolina Hurricanes Black Storm warning jerseys. It's the one where it's pretty much all blacked out, but the center logo, it's literally like the hurricane storm warning flag that they put on the beach when there's a storm
Yeah.
coming. I just think that they just look so slick. I love the all black look. It's just fire. And then my second favorite one, I'm not sure if they still wear them. I'm pretty sure they do. It's the Dallas Stars neon logo jerseys with the all black. I think
Mhm.
they pop. It's I don't know. I think it's just jersey masterclass. Those two jerseys are some of my favorite ones in the NHL. And I wasn't a big fan of the jerseys at first when they first came out. They kind of grew on me, but when you have something like that competing, like in the league, to make a really good third jersey, like I feel like that they should at least take note from those two teams because they've pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, I excuse me. I have to go and look at those to be honest, because again, off of your description, they do sound really cool. I just can't pull a visual to it in my head. Um, from my side, again, I don't know a lot of the alternate jerseys offhand, so I'm not going to pretend like I have that background. But I do know that I've always found for as crappy of an organization as they've been for much of the last few years, I have always had a soft spot for the San Jose Sharks jerseys. I really like that color. I think that they do a nice blend of, I think, classic and more traditional, but kind of putting a newer spin on it recently, which I think looks great. And then I think the other team that I would have to say, and I'm feel like I'm being a little bit of a homer by doing this, but I got to say it: the Buffalo Sabres. I absolutely love the Buffalo Sabres jerseys. And
Which
maybe
one?
again, pardon.
Which one? There's two.
The blue with um, the circle in the middle and all of
Circle.
that. Yeah. Um, Sorry, I was having trouble because I only can picture one Saber jersey right now. But yeah, no, and again, because that's the one where I had the Ryan Miller autographed one hanging up over my bed for so long. That's the one that I typically used to see when I was watching Sabres games on TV. I think probably just the nostalgia factor of it, but it just it hits a different level when I see that jersey again. Still, now, all right, I'm not letting you off the hook. So going back to the Vegas Golden Knights, I keep calling them the Las Vegas Golden Knights, but the Vegas Golden Knights. So, and I'm going to tie this in. We're going to go back. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent controversy with expansion and relocation after that. But so you have been an outspoken, I'll put it that way, an outspoken, not a fan of the Vegas Golden Knights the last couple of years, and vigorously opposing their recent success. Can you please explain that to me? Because I still don't understand it, and you've explained it to me about 10 times.
Okay, so this all started when the expansion draft happened.
Okay.
They pretty much took an entire team of misfits, as I like to put it, because yeah, I call them misfits because it was pretty much, not so stellar players that they were forming a team with. And they just somehow flew out of the gate like on fire pretty much, and they made their way to the Stanley Cup final in their
Hmm.
first season. Where else have you heard that happening? A lot of people around that era were saying that the refs got them there. And you know what? I would pretty much agree because, no one was really pulling for Vegas unless it was their fans. No one really was excited for Vegas to be, being added into an even league. It literally became 31 teams. West and East were not even anymore.
Hmm.
It didn't really make sense to me. Why were they expanding at that point? Um, so that was the first thing. The second thing, it's been known that Tampa Bay started this trend by taking advantage of the long term injured reserve cap. They didn't really make it too obvious,
Hmm.
but I think Vegas decided to take a note out of their playbook and try to follow the same thing. However, they make it extremely obvious and it frustrates a lot of NHL fans. The most recent situation of this happening was, Mark Stone was put on long term injury reserve right before the trade deadline. And suddenly, right before the deadline was over, Tomas Hertl was announced to be signing with the Vegas Golden Knights and an astronomical 6-year contract. Where were they getting the money from this? And I think personally it's going to bite them in the butt when, it comes time to re-sign some of their star players and, they can't afford to do it because they have all these other expensive guys that, they're not going to want to lower their salaries just so that they could keep other guys. I think it's going to be a financial crisis for them. But
I see.
I also think that the NHL should really put some rules in place for this because it's really not fair to other teams as well when you look into the bigger picture. Like, San Jose, for example, they're crumbling.
Yeah.
And then
Sorry. Go
and
ahead.
then one last thing with Vegas, I really did not think it was necessary for them to win the Stanley Cup game 9-3. We already knew that Florida wasn't really, they had run out of gas at that point, but
Hmm.
I just, at least from the sportsmanship aspect of it, that they really need to score 9 goals to get
Okay.
in that one game. Like I just think that that was the one game I never imagined that I would have done this. I did not watch that Stanley Cup final game. I've never missed one in my life. That was the
Hmm.
one game I did not want to watch because I did not want to watch the Vegas win.
Interesting. Jody says they had a top goalie that year, Marc-Andre Fleury. I'm assuming what that
No.
means. No,
Oh wait, are we talking about this year or a couple years ago?
that year it says
That year.
MAF. I'm assuming that means
Oh
Marc-Andre
yeah,
Fleury.
and I don't like the way that Vegas treated Marc-Andre Fleury at all. We
Hmm.
all remember on Twitter, at the time it was Twitter, his agent had posted the picture of, the Vegas sword pretty much stabbing Marc-Andre Fleury through his back, through his chest. Pretty much he was not informed that he was being traded. I believe he was traded to Minnesota at that point. I don't
Hmm.
remember exactly, but he had no idea. The general manager and pretty much everyone else in the Vegas organization that handles that stuff, they pretty much traded him without informing him or his agent first. I think that was very not classy. Like, this guy, he thought his future was going to be here after, Pittsburgh did him dirty too. But I think the way that Vegas handled that entire situation was just wrong.
Interesting. So it is more of a Vegas centric thing, not just like a you don't like expansion or that type of thing.
Well, I mean, I don't like from a financial perspective, I really don't think the NHL can currently afford the teams that they already have. I mean, the best example of that is Arizona. Literally, the NHL just let the Arizona government let let the team crumble. They wanted a new arena. Before they wanted a new arena, they wanted renovations to the current Glendale arena. The government didn't want that. So it forced them to go into mullet at Arizona State. And now pretty much Arizona is turning into a Utah team. And honestly, that's a whole nother thing. If you want to expand into the NHL, you should do it the right way instead of stealing another team's fan base. Well, stealing another fan base's team and relocating them. I don't think that's fair to, the loyal fans who have been riding with the Coyotes for as long as they have. It's pretty upsetting to me, especially because, they were one of the first teams that I also recognized when I first started following the sport at age 8. It's sad because I don't really remember the Atlanta Thrashers falling apart because I was
Mhm.
so young. So when the final Arizona Coyotes game of the season ended this year, it did make me very upset because, something that I grew up kind of watching was just gone. And I know that their NHL is giving the current owner 5 years to get a new arena
Right.
built, but I personally don't think it's going to happen because look what happened with this owner. They need a new owner and they need money and a place to actually put this arena. I hope that they do right for those Coyotes fans because they do not deserve to be forced to like the Utah team.
That's fair. Keith says, I will miss the Coyotes too. Um, yeah. And again, you talked about the Thrashers when they relocated to Winnipeg, because that was something that also, when I talked about being not supportive necessarily, but respecting the early success of the Golden Knights, because you look at other teams that have recently either expanded or relocated. We're talking the Kraken, we're talking the Wild, we're talking the Blue Jackets, we're talking the Thrashers. I
Yep.
mean, these are teams that you add the Golden Knights to them. Those last 5 teams, Golden Knights has more than half of the playoff series wins. Uh,
Yep.
they have 80 or more point seasons. Or, I'm sorry, 3 of them out of the 6 of those 5 teams. So just the fact that their success was so disproportionate for the recent expansion teams and relocation teams, I had a little bit of admiration and respect for that. But again, didn't know some of the stuff that you were also sharing as well. And then I'm going to circle back to that in a second. But he says, would the better expansion plan be international? Sweden, Norway, and Denmark seem like easy places to replace teams. Any others? Question mark.
That's interesting. My only concern is travel because, most of the teams are in Canada and in the United States. You would have to board a plane immediately after a game ends in the United States and then get on a red eye flight to get to, Sweden or Norway or Denmark. Like, is it going to be, is it going to take a toll on the players' bodies? It's
Mhm.
unfamiliar territory. The ice is going to have to be the same requirements that the states have. There's international play with the IIHF, and they don't have the same rules that the National Hockey League does. So, would those players be more comfortable with the IIHF's rules versus the NHL rules? I think that it might be a little complicated to try to expand like the league outside of the current North American place, but they have been trying to expose international fans to our teams through having preseason games in, for example, the Devils are going to be playing a game in Prague.
Right.
2 games, I believe. One of them is going to be against the Buffalo Sabres in Prague. And, it's great for people in Prague that really, like hockey and they stay up in the middle of the night to watch the games. But is it really going to be feasible for these American and Canadian teams to do such a thing when time zones are already kind of a pain in the butt for most of the NHL? You have the Vegas games and the Vancouver games playing at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time most of the time.
Right.
And, for someone on the West Coast wanting to watch a Devils home game, that's like 3 hours earlier and they're still in work.
Right.
I think
And
it's just not feasible to try to expand the game internationally when there's so many different rules and regulations that need to be followed, and just
mhm,
the hassle it's going to be on the players' bodies.
mhm. Now you're talking about the existence of it in Canada. What about another like North American or at least like Central or like if we're talking like let's say a Mexico City, I know has been talked about, or maybe we go down a little bit further. We're talking like a Brazil or something like that. Do you think that is something that they might look into a little bit more? Because obviously, they're obviously pretty comfortable going to a pretty decent north part of Canada. So just going the opposite direction, do you think that might be a more feasible approach?
I mean, Canada is pretty much the birthplace of hockey. So
Hmm.
it doesn't it makes sense that, they would have teams in Canada and the United
Right.
States. However, Mexico and Brazil, they're known for soccer. Like
Hmm.
our not our football, but like soccer.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
I don't know personally, I do not know if there's really a fan base down there
Hmm.
for hockey. I mean, hockey's not a very popular sport compared to baseball and football and basketball and pretty much soccer too. It
Hmm.
doesn't really chart in that sense. So I don't think there's really a market there to put teams there.
Now, actually, you just and it ties in well with the question that we got a few moments ago from Jody saying thoughts on Arizona moving to Utah. Now, again, I know we both are very, sympathetic toward the Coyotes fans. I grew up with a couple of Coyotes fans. They're very, distraught over this right now, validly so. But you're talking about things like, growing the game, expanding, the game because you just like you just said, it's lacking behind NFL, NBA, even MLB, and I'm pretty sure behind soccer, even in this country. I think I'm not 100% sure on that. But just the fact that it is lacking behind, and the fact that a couple of the most valuable NHL teams are middle of the pack at best in other leagues. Do you think that can you see an argument where for the betterment of the sport of hockey and the growth of the NHL itself, do you think that from that standpoint, this is the type of move that could make sense, or another expansion potentially is a type of move that could make sense, or at least trying to bring in fans in new areas, whether by expansion or relocation.
I mean, personally, I think the way to expand the game, it's not just about bringing more teams in. You
Hmm.
need to be able to have stability in the teams you currently have before
Hmm.
you can branch out. And
Hmm.
personally, I don't think that the NHL is up to par when it comes to marketing and, getting word out there about the games. They're not consistent. And
Hmm.
if they really want to, get the NHL up into a higher bracket where, they are top three, in front of the NFL or MLB, which will never
Right.
happen, they need to focus on those areas first. And I just, I mean, I know I'm very not into expansion because of all
Right.
the financial woes that it brings, but it could work down the line if it's done properly. And you can't take shortcuts because we're seeing it now. Utah is taking a currently formed Arizona team and just putting them in Utah. And you
Hmm.
know what? It just doesn't make sense to me. If they really wanted a team in Utah, they should have gone through the expansion process of, having an expansion draft, forming the team logo and stuff already. Um, Looking for interest in season tickets before just, announcing that there's going to be a team there. Like
Hmm.
that's what Seattle did. There needed to be interest there first before they became a real team. They had an
Hmm.
expansion draft that was official. Like I just don't think it's like ethical to just take an existing team and relocate them to another area and call them a new team.
That makes sense. And I'm gonna follow up on that in just a second, but I want to get to a few of the comments here. We've got the Oreo show is a new watcher coming in from, I believe it said, Ontario. Thank you so much for coming in. And I think he was saying that France would be a spot to look at for NHL. And he was talking about soccer as well. Thank you very much, the Oreo show, from coming in. He says, "Go Habs, go!" So he's a Habs fan. Um, and then Jody had asked about moving to Utah. We just spoke about that a little bit. He had one other question. Said, "I would like your thoughts. Have we seen too much of an increase in offense and scoring? Do you like how things are set up, or do we need to return to more defense?" I'm going to let you go first because I think he knows my answer on that, but I'll say it after.
I mean, if you look at the playoffs, how round one pretty much played out in the very beginning of the first, like maybe 3 or 4 games per matchup, we
Hmm.
saw a lot of scoring happening. And you know what? It's great for player stats and it's great to keep, teams and fans hyped up. But then there was kind of a downward slope in scoring, especially with the Toronto Maple Leafs game yesterday. It was 0-0 for most of the game until pretty much 10 minutes left. Toronto scored to take the lead, and then not even a minute later, Boston tied it up.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure the Vancouver Canuck game the other night, I believe it was like 30 seconds left in the game that Vancouver scored, and it was 1-0, and it eliminated Nashville.
Right.
Um, I think it adds suspense when there's not that much scoring. But I also feel like with a lot of scoring, you can't really get too comfortable because we have seen games go 6-6 into overtime. Like,
Right.
I know scoring is very important for player stats and stuff, but I like the balance of more scoring and less scoring because the different feelings that it gives for a fan, especially with the suspense it gives.
I think that that's. I mean, you put it great in terms of the, like you said, the balance. Because I think you compare it to other sports. NBA, I've gone on a rail on this show multiple times about how defense is just non-existent in the NBA, and it makes it a lot less interesting to me. I've talked about how in NFL the I don't want to say the skewing of the rules, but the heavily favored of the new rules toward increasing offensive production is not something that I particularly love. I mean, I enjoy I appreciate a good quarterback as much as anybody, but I mean you just the and that's one reason why I love guys like Aaron Donald because he's one of the few players like that, and whether it's NHL or other sports, players like that on defense who are able to go up and succeed at that level when the rules are not in favor of that position. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like to see sports like the NHL maintain a bit of a better balance. Roy Osborne saying "Go Avs." Okay, I got to take 10 seconds and do this because every time I see your name, I still see Roy Orbison. So I got to do 10 seconds and do this. Oh, pretty woman, walking down the street, pretty woman. Okay, we're done. Um,
Can I add something real quick to the
Please.
comment? So, when it comes to scoring, you also have to take the goaltenders into consideration. When there's a lot of scoring coming from either one side or both sides, it just shows weakness in the goaltenders. But when there's
Right.
no scoring whatsoever for a long period of time, it shows that, both teams have really strong goaltenders. I think it also just pretty much shows off in that aspect, like, how strong or weak a team could be based on who's in net. And I personally don't feel like the team's captain is pretty much the face of the team. I feel
Yeah,
like the goaltenders tend to be the face of the team. So it just shows that, whoever's in net, whoever's guarding for the team, it's pretty much on their backs to keep the players in the game, whether or not there is a score or not.
that's true. I mean, we were talking on kind of a cyclical, topic. We were talking at the beginning about, the issues of goalie, with a couple of the success of guys like the Toronto goalie during the playoffs and the lack of success with teams like Philadelphia. So yeah, no, I'm again like we've talked about. You mentioned the name Ryan Miller earlier. I grew up watching him. He was my favorite player in Buffalo for years. Yeah, definitely have a lot of appreciation for what a good goalie not just can bring during the game, but what it just means to the whole nature of your team throughout the scheme. He says, I would have been here earlier, but was watching NASCAR and witnessed the closest finish in NASCAR history. That was cool. Okay, I got to go back and look at that later. Holy smokes. I have not watched a ton of NASCAR the last couple of years, but I watched a lot of NASCAR growing up with my grandfather. He was a big fan of Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jeff Gordon. His name was Gordon. Um, I got to go back. I'm sure he would have loved to see that. Um, Kenny's going to ask a baseball question in a second, but I'm going to get in because I told him I was going to tell a funny story about us when it came to hockey. Just real quick. So I don't know if you'll remember this, but so I hadn't met or I hadn't spent a lot of time with Nicole when I was in school in senior year, and she was always wearing a Devils jersey. I don't know. She had enough Devils jerseys to wear one every single day, a clean one every single day for an entire academic year.
I still
And
do.
and you still do. And she was, I think, I'm pretty sure it was a Miles Wood jersey. And I'm in this building called Jubilee Hall. Did a lot of my work in Jubilee Hall. Did a lot of my studying in Jubilee Hall. And there were these tables right by the staircase when you first walk in. And I see a girl with auburn hair, long auburn hair, a little bit curly, wearing a Miles Wood jersey. So I like go up behind her to just kind of like try and like startle her. It wasn't Nicole. It was somebody else. Perhaps the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to me in college. So, but yeah, I knew you'd laugh at me mentioning that.
It's so funny because Miles Wood was not really a popular player
That's
stats
why I had no
wise.
reason to believe it was you or anyone
Yeah.
other than you.
You don't really see a lot of female Devils fans in particular wearing his jersey anymore, especially because he's not on the team. But, they were
Right.
wearing Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier because, they were the faces of the team at the time. But, there was something about Miles Wood. Like, it's not just, his appearance, but his grit.
Yeah.
He was always crashing into the net. He was always willing to get into fights. I like fighters. That I
Right.
really just liked Miles Wood's game, and I'm kind of sad that the Devils didn't really give him a chance after what happened last year. And he's in the playoffs now. He's proving his worthiness.
Where's he? Anaheim?
He is with Colorado in the
Oh, he is with
playoffs.
Colorado. I don't know why I thought he was with Anaheim.
He's currently playing with former Devils player Zach Parise, and Parise's going to be retiring at the end of the playoffs.
That name I don't remember. I do remember Miles Wood.
He was the captain of the New Jersey Devils during their 2012 Stanley Cup final run.
Okay.
And he left for Minnesota right after that. He went home.
Okay. That explains why I don't remember that
Yeah.
name. Real quick, Keith says, could we see the farm system reworked? Could we see an XFL/USFL/UFL for hockey? I think the UFL will be a feeder program for the NFL. I do agree with you on the UFL being a feeder program. I mean, we're already seeing a lot of either former NFL players go there or a lot of guys who are trying to get back to the NFL go there. Coaching wise, we're seeing a lot of respected coaches end up there. So I do agree with that. Do you think that there's because I know that the NFL, not the NFL, the NHL has a couple of I know that they have the WHL. I know that they have I don't know if it's called the CHL. I don't know. I know that there's a couple of kind of comparable leagues. Do you see that as a thing? Because I know we have the AHL is kind of like the minor league, but like in terms of more levels, do you think that that's something that we could see?
I mean, I feel like it would only work if NHL and AHL teams were willing to sign those players for recalls.
Mhm.
It honestly depends on the rules of an XHL game, so to say, if that's what they would call it.
Yeah.
I don't really know too much about the UFL and the XFL. I don't really follow
Okay.
it too much, so I can't really comment
Mhm.
too in depth on it. But I mean, if take the AHL for example, that's where pretty much most of the guys that want to play in the NHL put in their hard work and grit to get that notice that they're being called up to the big league.
Mhm.
And if it's something similar to that, it might work. I just don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah, I was trying to remember because I'll be 100% honest. The leagues that I was naming, I'm remembering off of playing Chell on my PS4. So like I couldn't quite remember like what the specific ones were. I know the AHL, but I couldn't remember the because I remember that there was like a Canadian league, and I think that there was one in Europe as well.
There's the
Um,
ECHL, there's the
that was one of them.
WHL.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
there's
those were the Okay, so those were the correct ones. Okay. He's going. Kenny's going to baseball for us real quick. Says thoughts on Aaron Judge getting oh boy, getting ejected for the first time in his career for nothing. And do you want robot umpires in the future? I'm going to take this one first because that was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. So Aaron Judge was promoted to the big leagues 8 years ago. He spent he spent half of his first season in the majors, and then 2017 was his breakout year, the home run record, all of that. Aaron Judge has never once been in a position where his character has been questioned, where his sportsmanship or any of that has been questioned. This guy has never gotten into a quote unquote character issue or a maturity issue once in his professional career. He was named captain, which the Yankees are not an organization that takes the captain lightly when you've got guys like Thurman Munson, Derek Jeter, and guys like that, Don Mattingly and company. So you've got all of this knowledge, and if you've umpired a game in Major League Baseball in the last 8 years, you have a good idea of what Judge's reputation is. Judge was looking at a pitch. He was looking at a pitch that was called strike three. He was walking back to the dugout, was not looking at the umpire, turned away from the umpire, and said, "I'm." And he had turned away. He was heading back to the dugout, and he basically said, "Same BS all game." He said the actual words, but he basically said, "Same BS all game." Wasn't looking at the umpire, was almost back to the dugout now, and the umpire says, "You're gone." The umpire ejects him when he's not even face to face with him anymore. And again, we have just seen some of these these umpires. I've seen baby food that is not as soft as some of these umpires, and I'm just not understanding why it's getting worse. It feels like it's getting worse year to year to year, because I'm going on these things. There's websites, there's like ump scorecard and things like that. It's the metrics of these guys are getting worse, and I've said 1,000 times, when the announcers and the analysts and company know who to watch out for. Oh, it's a Laz Diaz game. Oh, it's an Angel Hernandez game. When they know to expect these umpires to put a stamp on their game with their crap calls, then that is a problem that I don't understand. And I'm not going to go on a rail about the umpires union, because I could spend an entire episode just on that. But no, and I've not been a huge proponent historically on robot umpires. But if that's what it's going to take, or at least be able to make calls or balls and strikes reviewable with whatever they're using to chart these things analytically, at least be able to make balls and strikes reviewable, or hire people who are not going to have their egos threatened by the fact that a player is pissed off that they screwed up. Something's got to change. And I've never been more of an advocate for potentially getting some sort of robot umpire system in, until yesterday, which has made me a lot warmer to the idea. Nicole, your turn.
So I will admit I don't know too much about baseball like I do hockey.
Right.
But I was watching the game where Aaron Boone was ejected for something a fan said.
Yep, last
And
week.
that was my first instinct where I noticed that something was up, because the umpire saw the video review of the fan yelling what he thought Boone was yelling, and
Yep.
even though he was wrong, he didn't
Mm-hmm.
care, and he still kicked Boone out. I
Yep.
think that it's very childish that we're having these, I know them as referees because that's what hockey is. But these umpires are pretty much, they're trying to change the way the game is played in a sense when they're making these stupid calls. I didn't think that was really fair because, they showed every angle of this fan yelling and Boone not saying a word. He wasn't even looking over at the umpire, and the umpire's just like, "You're gone." Like, take accountability. And I know that John Tortorella is very outspoken when it comes to, the refs in the NHL.
One of the reasons I love.
He gets fined for it all the time, but you know what? I like that he's real about it, because it is an issue that the NHL continues to face. And if the MLB does not get their act together, it's definitely going to be something that we're going to see on repeat. And I did see a clip on TikTok of the Aaron Judge incident from yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it's just ridiculous that these umpires are not getting the story straight. Like, for someone with so much experience in the MLB, you should not be making stupid mistakes, especially the one with Aaron Boone. That's just unacceptable.
Well, you talk about experience. I mean, experience, all that really means is time spent in. If these guys are not brought down, if these guys are not penalized, if these guys are brought back over and over again, in spite of making the same crap calls and in spite of making the same dumb game-affecting decisions, then they're not going to have any incentive or any push to improve what they're doing, because it doesn't matter. They're not based on merit.
Is there any is there any history of umpires ejecting managers for something a fan has said? Like, is the Boone situation the first of that kind?
Pardon me. I can't say that I know for sure if there's precedent. I believe that there is, but I don't have a specific incident in my head. I remember reading that it was similar to other situations, but I cannot recall that one. And real quick, Roy Osborne said, "I watched 2 UFL games today. It was pretty good. Watched AJ McCarron play. I just wanted to say, as a former Tide fan, still a big AJ McCarron fan, and glad that he's still kicking it somewhere." Okay, here we go. Nicole, our audience, and myself are waiting for a good scoop story. Please share if you have one for us all. Remember, Nicole, this is a family show.
I mean, I don't really have anything that's like hysterical to share because I feel like even though you and I go back and forth all the time about our sports,
Yeah,
like, our friendship is a lot deeper than that.
right.
When I was a junior at Seton Hall and you were a senior,
Yeah,
it was the spring semester when I found out that you were being hospitalized. And that was one of the scariest times for me in that year because, this was your last semester on campus. I didn't know if you were going to, make it through all what was going on. Like I had no idea. And you went back home for most of that semester. I didn't know if you were going to get to walk at graduation.
right.
And, I told myself, like, if he does get better and if he does, end up coming back, I am not missing him walk at graduation. So, my best memory with Scoop would definitely be watching him walk across that stage after all the hardships that he's been through with his medical history and academic history and receive his undergraduate diploma. That was one of my proudest moments as his friend.
I really appreciate that. And again, you, your father, your sister, your whole family. Dave Mullen was there with you and I when I was finally back in New Jersey. I was very grateful for the support that y'all had. You guys were sending me stuff while I was still in the hospital. There were very few people who were consistently there for me as much as you, and not just you and your relatives as well. And I'm beyond grateful for that. So, thank you. I really appreciate that. Um,
I'm just grateful for your friendship.
Likewise, likewise. Kenny says, "Thanks for sharing that, Nicole. Way to go, Scoops." Yeah, no, I again, that was just over, literally just over 2 years ago. And just one quick shout out to just you guys, my mom, all the doctors that were there for me during that time, because the fact that I'm able to really do these things at full energy now is definitely a testament to them. Trevor says, I remember the Pacers and the Pistons brawl. Players went to the stands and were fighting the fans. Was that the Ron Artest? I can't remember the name of it. They had a special name for it. It was like I don't even know. But am I remembering the same thing, Trevor? Because I feel like that was what I'm trying to think of, but I'm blanking.
I know
So
that I know that happened once in the NHL many, many years ago where there was, I think it was Boston players climbing over the glass to, like, I don't remember why, but they were fighting the crowd. I don't remember what exactly happened to start this. I think they were just bad mouthing each other. Um, you know, it exists in all sports at some capacity, but I think it's a lot more controlled now in hockey, especially because there is that glass that's separating them. Whereas with
right,
basketball and like I know football, they're a lot higher than the players, like
yeah,
on the field, but with basketball, it's a lot more difficult because the fans are literally on the same level as the players.
yeah. No, I mean, real. I know it's not NBA, but I was a manager for a couple of years for a varsity basketball guys team back in high school, and more than once I went to just like reposition something or had to move like something or other, and my coach would be like, "Get the back, get on the," because like I was literally that close that I was like, if I stepped the wrong way, I was in the line of fire with the game. In fact, there was one time, and this will be quick, but I had this big like Home Depot bucket, which just had like the water in that people were using like for the little Dixie cups of water for when they were on the sideline, and the ball. This couldn't happen a second time in 1,000. The ball bounces over twice, bounces into the bucket. The water splashes all over me while I'm in my suit watching, managing the game. It was one of the most bizarre things that, but when you talk about how close you get in certain sports, I have to share that real quick. But he says that it was um, that it was the fight that included Rod Artest. Um, let me see here. We got it. Okay, yeah, he said it was that included Ron Artest. So thank you for that. This is the most beautiful. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate
Thank
what
you.
Nikki said. Thank you, Mr. Osborne. I appreciate you always being on these shows recently, and being as active as you've been.
I'm not kidding when I say that Scoop's definitely one of the strongest people I know.
I appreciate that. And Kenny says, a question to get us all laughing. How long do these oh my lord, do these
Here we
self-named
go.
scoops meet up last, and what actually happened to them? Asking for Trevor, LOL. And just want to make it clear, Trevor, this is we are both very diehard Swiftie fans. If you're referencing what happened last week with listening to the album, that was a different situation. But Nikki, if you want to respond to this, go ahead.
What was the question?
How long do these self-named Swiftie scoops meet up last, and what actually happens to them? I think what he's making a joke at is last week when I was listening to the record with a friend of mine. I think he might be confusing a couple of people. The friend that I added you to the group chat with,
Oh,
no, I'm down to do another listen to the album run through if you want to schedule that at some point. That sounds like a lot of fun.
we definitely should. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't really seen Scoop since he's a whole state away, upstate New York, and I'm, in New Jersey, obviously. But, any chance we do get, we get on the phone, face to face, and, whether it's personal life or Taylor Swift or hockey, we always, there's not a day where I don't talk to him. Let's put
No,
it that way.
I
It's
was gonna say that earlier when
constant
I was introducing
communication.
you. When I was introducing you, I was gonna say that we met in the spring of 2020. I don't think that I've gone back-to-back days without talking to you in the entire. Well, let me rephrase that. Perhaps there've been a couple of days where I was just listening to you and not actually being the one talking. But in all seriousness, no, you've definitely been a very consistent part of my life, and I'm very grateful for that. He says, "I told you can blame Kenny. LOL. He's speaking for me." Yeah, Trevor, you're one of a kind, brother. How many Taylor concerts have you attended? I know he's speaking. I know he's asking you on this one because I'm still waiting to attend my first.
Unfortunately, I have never attended a Taylor
Oh, I
concert.
thought you had.
No, I was not able to get tickets to the Eras tour. It was way too expensive for nosebleed seats. It was like almost $1,500 just for
For
one ticket
nosebleed seats?
for nosebleed seats. Yeah, for at MetLife Stadium. I
That's
do I do watch the bootleg videos live on TikTok as
Mhm.
they're happening, at least for majority of the shows, because if you don't know how Taylor Swift operates, she pretty much leaves Easter eggs or clues in her music and her writing and, in her personal life that's shown by paparazzi and stuff. And, us Swifties, we try to decode what she's giving us next. So pretty much when she gave us at MetLife Night 1, the I Could See You music video, no, not the I Could See You one, the Karma music video at Ice Spice,
Oh,
that was pretty much to me the confirmation that the next re-recording of her masters was going to be 1989, and I got it right. I
so
That was one of my most
that's
accomplishing Taylor
exciting.
moments. But yeah, I've never seen her, but I have been a Swiftie since the Fearless era. Fearless was one of my
Yeah.
favorite songs, but my favorite album is definitely Speak Now.
I told you that Fearless is the song that I use for my alarm when I wake up, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Nicole is the Jersey Shore cool. It's from my friend Jody.
I do love the Jersey Shore. There's just a lot of great food, great beaches. It's a great atmosphere. I love going to the farmers markets on the weekends that they host down there to support the local businesses.
Yeah.
Um, the arcades, the boardwalk. There's multiple different ones in New Jersey too. It's not just, Point Pleasant or Seaside. There's also Wildwood Crest. There's Atlantic City's boardwalk. There's Ocean City, New Jersey's
Yeah.
boardwalk, because I know there's an Ocean City, Maryland. But it depends on where you are. They all cater to different clientele. There's not they don't have like all the same stuff. Like
Mhm.
that's what makes them all unique, and I kind of like going to them in that I can talk aspect. I've talked so much in this hour, it's catching up with me. But
That's
but
never stopped you before.
if there's one thing I love, it's the boardwalks and the beaches, and getting to have fun with my friends over the summer, not worrying about schoolwork, stuff like that.
Kenny, real quick, says some of K&K will be down in Wildwood Memorial Day weekend, Nicole. And I'm glad he said that because I wanted to bring this up real quick. Have you heard? Because I'm getting to Wildwood at some point in the next 3 months. Have you heard about this new bar called Honky Tonk that's opening up in
Yes, I
Wildwood?
have. Yes, I
I
have. It
I
is it is in the location of the current Boardwalk Mall. It's downstairs. I think that from what my dad told me, it used to be like a vintage arcade. So I hope they
yeah,
didn't tear
I heard
I hope,
that.
I hope they didn't tear out the entirety of that because that's just history getting erased.
Right. But no, I was glad that he mentioned Wildwood because I don't know when I'll be able to go because I got invited to New Jersey in June, but I don't know when I'll be able to go. But I got to get to that country bar so badly. I'm dying to go to that place ever since I saw it advertised and was told about it.
There's a lot of great restaurants in Wildwood and Cape May too that you can't pass up. So that's
Yeah,
also another big favorite for me when I go down with my family to Wildwood for the summer vacation.
that's awesome. No, I've been to Cape May and I've been to one of the other places that you mentioned down in that southern tip. I can't remember if I went specifically to Wildwood, but
Was it Ocean City?
I've been to Ocean City, but it's
Oh,
not the one.
Asbury Park. Asbury Park you went to.
Yeah, no, Freehold. That's what it was. I was in Freehold. Um, Let us know. Scoops will be also down the before 4th of July. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to y'all because I'm due for a New Jersey trip. I'll say that I haven't been to New Jersey since the beginning of January, and I think that's the longest I've not been in New Jersey since I graduated. So, um, but I'm glad to know that because I'll definitely will try to connect with y'all while I'm down there. That being said, wow, okay, we really went over the buzzer on this one, but but hey, I warned anybody who tuned into this that with you and I going up there on the show tonight, that was going to be inevitable. He said, "Let's get Trevor down and we can have a K&K Scoops and DBR party." I am so down. I am so down. I've there's so many of y'all that I ain't met in, even the first time yet, and a lot of y'all I'd love to see for a second. So, if you could go back in time and watch one hockey memory in person, it would be. I actually
Ooh,
have a feeling we're going to say the same one, but I'll let you go first.
okay. There is one in particular that it kind of angers me because it was the 2012 Eastern
Okay.
Conference final.
Mhm.
I have no recollection whatsoever of being at this game. It was the Henrique It's Over game when Henrique
Okay.
scored the game winning goal to advance to the cup final.
Mhm.
I have no recollection of this game whatsoever. My dad has told me constantly since I brought it up to him that we were in fact at that game. But you
Mhm.
know what? Adam Henrique is still my favorite player, and for me not to remember seeing that moment in person pains me. And I remember why now because the game went to overtime. We
Yeah.
wanted to beat traffic, so we left the game before overtime started.
Oh my God.
And we ended up going down the shore because the Modell's that was there at the time was opening an hour earlier. But we didn't notice at the time. After they had won, we found out that the Modell's near us down here had they had the Eastern Conference Championship merch, and they were going to open the store an hour early so that because they expected an influx of fans that wanted the merch. So I don't, and it's even funnier because when the celebration happened, like,
Mhm.
when they jump up and start hugging each other, it was right in front
Yeah.
of my section too. I
I would
was
be I would be so pissed off.
I was 11 when it happened,
Right.
and he's still my favorite player. I love Adam Henrique. You just can't hate him. He's a great
What
guy.
what team's he on?
He's currently in the playoffs for Edmonton. He's playing with
Edmund.
Connor McDavid.
Yeah. Yeah. That one.
But that's one that if I could go back and tell my dad let's not leave early, I would want to like see that actually happen for like real. But if we're talking about ones that I was not alive for, it would probably be the game where Marty Brodeur scored his first NHL goal. I think that it's just such a memorable moment in hockey history, especially because it's very uncommon to have goalie goals, and he's pretty much the reason why I got into hockey. I mean, I have his rookie card right here.
Oh my gosh.
So seeing him, score one of his 3 goals in history, and just seeing the excitement jumping on the ice when it happened, and him being the reason why the NHL implemented the Brodeur rule to close the trapezoid so that they can't play the puck as much.
Mhm.
I think it would have been great to see that live.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's not what I thought you were going for, but man, that's story, man. Yeah, I would never get over that, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. But man, no, if you talk about hockey, I got to go back to in terms of because again, we're talking about ones that I haven't gotten to see. It's got to go. I got to go back to February 22nd, 1980. Us, over the Soviets. I got to go.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's like I feel like if you gave me just in sports in general a moment that I could go back to, that probably would still be in consideration, even though hockey is not one of my top 3 sports that I follow. It's still got to be up there. Just the history of that, the way that movie gets me so fired up every time I watch it. Um, thank
It's
you,
funny.
Carl. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's funny that you bring up that 1980 game,
Mhm.
because when the last time the NHL players were allowed to play in the Olympics, it was when TJ Oshie won the game against Russia,
Yeah.
in the shootout. It's actually a very funny story for me to share, because I was actually at the dentist during that game,
Hmm.
and they had the game on while I was in the chair, and they would not touch me or my teeth until that game ended, because
I'm not surprised.
it was just so much intensity, and I was so into it, and I didn't even know at that point that you could reuse players in the shootout. So when
Yeah.
it was Kovalchuk and Datsuk versus TJ Oshie, I was going strong for him. That
Yeah.
was a great memory. So for you to say, like, you'd want to see 1980,
Yeah.
and I wrote papers on 1980.
I'm not
That's another
surprised at
game
all.
that I probably would go see that's not NHL related.
Nicole, that's like a Robin Williams Goodwill Hunting moment. Wow, love your first moment. Yeah, that's yeah, man, that was a great movie. And rest in peace to Robin Williams. And Kenny says, not a hockey memory, but Memorial Day weekend, Yankees Red Sox 2001 drive from Long Beach Island to New York. I think that's supposed to be Long Beach Island to New York City. Took 6 hours instead of 2, and the Yankees were losing 7-0 after 1 inning. Oh boy. Thank you, Carl Pavano. Yeah, as soon as you said down by 6 or down by 7 to Boston in the early 2000s, Carl Pavano. It was either in my mind, it was either Carl Pavano or Kay Agawa. And then Keith just said Marty. And he says for one I won't forget. Real quick, and then I'm gonna have to wrap it up because we've kept. I feel like people have stayed on a lot longer than they expected. But I will say real quick because you mentioned a story that it reminds me of. So you were talking about being at the dentist and he wasn't gonna do anything, or she, I don't know which, but um, growing up. So I mentioned that I used to go to a bunch of Sabres games. So I had, and it's hilarious because my dentist as well. My dentist is a big lifelong Sabres fan. He had, I don't know if it was season tickets, but he had a lot of tickets to Sabres games. And I started going to Sabres games because I had to go to the dentist very frequently because I had like multiple extra teeth, and I was impossible to just like settle down and calm down so that they could do what they had to do. And he basically said to me, "If you're able to let me do what I need to do, if you're able to just stay calm, I'll give you my Sabres tickets to the next game." So I went to like 5 different Sabres games because of these stupid extra teeth that I had. So like every time I had to get a tooth extracted, I was like, all right, well, that's a nice trade off, I guess. But it just, when you said dentist and hockey, I was like, how do I not? I had to share that story real quick. But Keith says, fantastic show. I already want more. Yeah, Nikki, we're gonna have to have you on more often. And I'm also gonna have to tell the guys, I think, that I'm gonna need 2 hours instead of one. But
I
um,
appreciate the compliment, Keith. Thank you.
yeah, and that being looking like it's going to be the last comment, Nikki, I'm going to wrap things up, and I'm going to have you answer one question for me before you sign off. If you
Scoop,
could
Kenny sent something in the private chat.
say again.
Kenny said something in the private chat.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay, just making sure.
Um, just want to ask you one question as we sign off. Gary
Mhm.
Bettman reaches out to you tomorrow, writes you a letter, and says you can have one change made to the NHL tomorrow. One change. What's your change that you would make?
No Fanatics jerseys.
Can't say I disagree with that since I've seen what they've done. Um, and Kenny says, Nicole, you were an awesome guest, and you're always welcome back on any of our shows. Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. Nikki, I've really appreciated having you on tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Roy Osborne said, awesome pod, guys. Keith said, fantastic show. I already want more. So, guys, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. And that being said, signing off for What's the Scoop episode 23. Nikki, if you have any closing thoughts before we wrap up here.
I feel like this was a great way for me to at least showcase, not just my Devils knowledge, but, the rest of my hockey knowledge. Like, they don't call
Yeah.
me Hockey Nut for nothing. So, thank you, Scoop, for bringing me on and allowing me to, share my passion for hockey. I'm really glad that I got to do
Absolutely.
this with you.
No, same here. We have not had a lot of hockey talk on this show, but you are definitely going to be back on soon. We've got a couple of other guys. We've got a Rangers fan friend of ours, a couple of Rangers fans friend of ours that we're going to get on. So you think this episode got fun at times? Imagine what that's going to be like when we get those guys on. But Trevor says, "Great show, guys. Thank you for coming on, Nicole. Can't wait for that future debate show with Scoops. LOL. Oh, that's gonna be can't miss show. But yeah,
Thank you
Nikki.
again for having me.
Yeah, Nikki. Thank you enough can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. And looking forward to seeing what happens. And good luck in our bracket challenge the rest of the way as well. Even though I'm a little bit kicking your butt.
Same to you.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. First off, catch me Friday night at 10:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central on Denver. Oh my God, I keep doing that. Rocky Mountain Sports Network for Settle the Scores, covering your Colorado Rockies. And back next Sunday night, 9 p.m. for What's the Scoop? Same Scoop time, same Scoop channel.